Robert, would you like to hear my British Army story?
I don't know if we have time for that, but go ahead.
No, it's 30 seconds. I was
Okay.
commander of the American Legion and the VFW on Long Island. And we had a couple come in and wanted to join. And it was a British female who was a veteran, and it was an Irish man, her husband, who was a veteran. And I had to tell them we can accept her because she was a member of an allied army. But since the Irish army was neutral, you can't join, but you can be the auxiliary. So when she's attending the meeting, you can sit with the wives. So I always thought that was kind of interesting.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sure the 167 people who are on enjoyed this story also.
Good evening, everyone. Today is the 11th of November, which is Veterans Day in the United States and Armistice Day in Europe. And this is the day we remember and honor our war veterans. My name is Bob Gray. I'm here for with my co-chair, Joan Harmer, from the British Empire Study Group. We're a group of individuals. We like social and technical aspects of learning philately. And in better days, we meet at the Collectors Club in Midtown Manhattan. And then today's webinars like today. Great Britain was the start of philately. Here's a shot of Stanley Gibbons, the first dealer, and John Gray, no relative, the first stamp collector. British Empire philately embraces virtually the entire world. These are colonies, but wherever the British Army went or British Postal Service, there was British philately. And no matter what you collect, there's a piece of Britain there. Philately can be stamps and albums, or it can be postal history, rates, routes, markings, and so forth. And it can be history itself, just postal artifacts that make that are relevant for historical research. There's a shot of the Collectors Club building in Manhattan. Our next meeting will be Zoom, December 9th, 6 p.m. Robert Vogel and Cliff Beattie, the story of the Canadian local, provincial, and national Christmas seals. Just some housekeeping. Questions will be live, but feel free to use the Q&A chat. Following the presentation, there will be some time for social discussions. If you would like to disable closed captioning, please click on the live transcript and hide subtitles. If you don't see it, click more and you will see the live transcript section. And importantly, in the upper right, you will view a button. This can be moved and used to change to a gallery view to see more people in the social hour. Okay, leave it to Joan now for the introductions.
Anyway, I'd like to thank all the veterans out there for their service. Really appreciate it. This is your day and happy to have you here. We have Ken Pugh here today. Ken is an educator and he wrote about 39 articles. I can't keep track. He's a prolific writer, and he's a paleontologist also, which is like he's one of the first paleontologists I've ever met. We won't make any fossil jokes. With him tonight is Sergeant Major Herbert Friedman. I know, I get criticized all the time. This is a guy who takes no prisoners. You could read about his biography. It would take me the whole night. But psychological warfare is one of his specialties. And he's an author of more books than could fit on my screen. But right now, you're not here to hear me. I'm going to turn it over to Ken and Sergeant Major Herbert Friedman. Ken?
Thank you.
Okay, I'll share screen. We should have the first slide. Hope everybody can see that. And thank you for inviting me. This is a story that's taking me into some fascinating research areas. It's not one that's easy in the sense that it's all about spies, espionage, assassinations, killings. And the various countries didn't commemorate those things usually on stamps. So I've tried different ways to present the story using postcards, stamps in an indirect way, photos, and Currency. So welcome, and I shall begin. Now, I'm trying to advance this, and it's not advancing. So I'm not sure what to do here.
Click in the slide.
Yeah. Okay. And okay, this study is based on the horrific and inhumane period of human history. It illustrates and discusses some people, places, and events that are not pleasant to remember. The author and me did not want to bring attention to these people any other way than putting them in a historical context. And in reflection, I wish to recognize and honor the 143 prisoners in Sachsenhausen concentration camp, some of whom gave their lives creating these counterfeits for their SS captors. And history will not forget them. And this is one of the stamps that Canada produced to commemorate the Holocaust. The story today discusses two of the operations that were involved. Operation Andreas, which is a operation that produced forged currency of the 5 and 10 pound British notes, and Bernard, which is a continuation of that. The next section of this presentation is in January, and Operation Water Wave, and there's a couple of others, cornflakes from the OSS and Water Wave, which produce propaganda stamps, and so on will be discussed. Okay, to start, September 6, 1939, at the Reich Propaganda Ministry in Berlin, Deputy Minister Leopold Güterer submitted a proposal to his boss, Dr. Joseph Goebbels, Reich Minister for Popular Enlightenment and Propaganda for the Luftwaffe, to airdrop counterfeit Bank of England notes over England. Güterer's target was 30% of the British currency in circulation and would result in the British economy being destroyed. Goebbels was not immediately taken with the plan and referred to it as ein Großen Plan. In his diary, he was worried of retaliation, stating, "But what if the English do the same to us?" And he continued to let the plan be explored further. Shortly after, on September 18th, 1939, near the time and place where this photograph was taken, it's on a postcard actually, a second secret meeting took place in the Reich. And I must apologize for my pronunciation of German here, because I murder languages terribly. So Finance Ministerium at Wilhelmstrasse 61, Berlin, Arthur Neeb, chief of the SS criminal police, made a suggestion to SS Obergruppenführer Richard Heinrich, head of the Reich Security Office, to employ professional counterfeiters to produce British forged currency. Nee's plan is very similar to the plan presented by Dr. Goebbels by Güterer 12 days earlier. Neeb was a piece of work. It was he who helped adapt the mobile gas van for the mass murder of Jews in Eastern Europe. His superior, Heinrich Himmler, could not personally stand the sight of people being shot. The only person to object to the plan was Walter Funk, who served as Hitler's economics minister and head of the Reichsbank. He refused the use of the central bank's laboratories to print shop and warned that counterfeiting was against international law. Funk was eventually overruled, but demanded that any fake currency be barred from Germany's conquered territories or allies. Heinrich like Neve's plan, but had reservations involving career criminals in the operation, fearing that many would impact negatively on his involvement in the international police organization of which he was the chief in the end. A plan titled Offensive Against Sterling and Destruction of its Position as World Currency was drawn up. To avoid using criminals, the Reichsbank would do the printing of 30 milliards or billions of £1 Bank of England notes. And the notes would be distributed in the diplomatic bags of the Ministry of the Navy. It had tried numerous times by various professionals, but never with much success. It's counterfeiting English banknotes. The formula for the special rag paper used to make the banknotes was a highly guarded secret and presented one of the most difficult technical problems to overcome. The printing could only be done on a large commercial press, and deciphering the complex number system and serial system embedded in the watermark and printing plates was a very difficult challenge. I know Neve's plan was to counterfeit the £1 notes above. It actually did not happen. SS Brigade for Walter Schellenberg stated that it was considered as well as the £100 note. Counterfeiting the banknotes of England was a plan that not everybody could buy into. At first, Adolf Hitler had reservations, and the plan was never endorsed by Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler. Finally, the Reichsminister of Economics, Walter Funk, continued to oppose the plan. Their main worry was retaliation. If the Bank of England found out about the Nazi plan to destroy it and the economy of Britain by rendering British banknotes valueless, they worried what the British would do to the Reichsmark. Interesting, a plan to exterminate an entire race of people, men, women, and children, was approved by the Nazi hierarchy, but counterfeiting the Bank of England notes was too risky for them. John Steinbeck's proposal to Franklin D. Roosevelt on September 12, 1940, the author John Steinbeck and Dr. Melvin Knizia met with US President Franklin D. Roosevelt and proposed a plan to counterfeit the German currency in large quantities as an economic weapon against the Nazis. Roosevelt's reaction was, this is strictly illegal and we can do it. Why, for the cost of one destroyer, we could send Italy spinning, and for the cost of a cruiser, we could have Hitler on a hot stove lid. The notes would be distributed in diplomatic bags of the Ministry of the Navy. Despite Roosevelt's enthusiasm for Steinbeck's and Knizia's plan, it was killed by Henry Morgenthau Jr., Secretary of the Treasury, depicted on the left in this photo, as against the law and impractical. Afterwards, numerous agents of the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS from now on, and other branches of the military made similar proposals to counterfeit Reichsmark. All were rejected at the time. Interesting, why all the counterfeit Reichsmark proposals were rejected, a request by General Douglas MacArthur for 10 million counterfeit pesos in Japanese occupation currency was secretly approved. The counterfeits were used in the Philippines to destabilize the local economy and for use by guerrilla forces to buy supplies. The counterfeits were printed by the Office of or the OSS in Australia. And if we break from here, Herb has a sheet of these, which he may be able to show.
Okay. Do you want to bring that up or?
Yes.
So
this is.
I'd like to ask, can I also just mention a comment or two, Ken, about where we're going?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just real quick, I'm sort of taking notes as we go. The £1 note you showed earlier, the British £1 that was not counterfeited was used as a parody. I'm sure you know that. Several notes with Italian propaganda or Arabic propaganda on the back was placed on that £1 note. You mentioned Steinbeck. It appears that he might have been OSS. It's never come out and he's never quite admitted it, but they've done everything but admit it. So the reason he could make a suggestion to Roosevelt was that he was OSS. And the last thing is talking about when the German banker had questions about counterfeiting American money. There was a rumor that was very popular at the time that the United States and Germany had got together and made a deal. They would not counterfeit each other's money. There was a lot of money. These were big, big people. They were very rich, and they were not going to mess up each other's economy. And that at least was the rumor. There'll never be any proof that that was true. And of course, later on, you're going to mention that later, as the war went on, the Germans did decide to counterfeit American currency. But that's a whole nother story. And back to you.
Could you hold up that sheet that you had?
Yeah, I saw it. Can you make it larger so they can see it well? Or
yeah. Well, we get the idea, I think.
This did not come from Australia. This came from
We could look at
Washington,
it in the show and tell at the end.
All right. In Washington, D.C., they had a printing plant. They also had one in London. And of course, they had one in Bern. They had in Switzerland. And Washington, D.C., they did this. And of course, in Bern and also in Rome, they counterfeited the cornflake stamps that you mentioned earlier. And if you mention cornflakes, you have to mention sauerkraut too, because they were the same exact people. And in fact, a lot of the material could be used for either one. And I'm out again.
Yeah. What I'm presenting here is a very brief, short form of the entire story. I have many, many more pages that I have, but I had to cut it down in order to fit the time frame. So there are gaps, and there are details that are missing. So to carry on, interesting, while the counterfeit Reichsmark proposals were rejected, a request by General Douglas MacArthur for 10 million counterfeit pistols in Japanese currency, etc., was approved. And this is what we had before. Okay, a letter from Winston Churchill to Sir John Simon, Chancellor of the Exchequer of the Cabinet of Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, September 24th, 39, just 6 days after the September 18th meeting. And I hear from quarters a plan for forged notes, marks, and bundles, and attempting little packets in Germany from our airplanes, like Pitt spread his assnets. I cannot fully think of the consequences of this, but I should think it would be just as good as leaflets. I should very much like to know how this strikes you. So a comment from Winston Churchill. So the British were about to drop forged ration coupons and Reichspfennig notes with offensive messages over Germany at this time. This is a sample of the ration coupons. The Special Operation Executive, there from now on we'll call it SOE, were quick to enter the scene as creating and distributing fake documents, currency, and stamps in occupied Europe. This is it was their cup of tea. They were specialists in black propaganda. In other words, clandestine currency, documents, and stamps that were intended to have originated from Germany and not from the Allies. Soon after Germany invaded the Netherlands and Belgium in September 1939, the SOE, under the technical guidance of Seft van Delmer, replicated German-issued ration cards, such as the above, which is an SOE meat ration forgery. They were dropped over Germany in an attempt to disrupt and control rationing of economic products. The German hierarchy was furious at this attempt by the British to disrupt their wartime economy, and their citizens were threatened with death if caught using these SOE fakes. Retaliation was in order. The forged ration stamp operation by SOE had mixed results, but it did infuriate the German High Command and provided that incentive for the planners to investigate as suitable payback. And while forged British ration coupons were again suggested, the more elaborate plan to forge British currency now came into favor. The operational name chosen by the Germans was Andreas, named after the X-shaped cross on the Union Jack. St. Andrew of Scotland. There's one other item here that comes before. In addition to ration coupons, the SOE counterfeited German military auxiliary payment certificates imitating the genuine 50 Reichspfennig above. The front of the notes were excellent reproductions, but the reverse made no attempt to deceive. In place of the regular text, the replacement text read, "I am a piece of Hitler's ass paper. Nobody accepts me because nobody can buy anything from me." And the SOE printed different propaganda messages in the counterfeit notes, dropped them into Germany. With 3 separate suggestions to counterfeit the Bank of England notes and drop them over England, Heydrich presents the plan to Hitler. Heydrich was ready to present the plan to Hitler for final approval and called the plan Operation Andrew, and orders were given to begin research and development. Ultimate authority for Operation Andrews and later Operations Bernard and Waterwave lay with Adolf Hitler. And the operational approval for Andreas, Hitler was clear in his instructions to SS Obergruppenführer Richard Heydrich. In his own handwriting in the memorandum, Hitler added the margins, "Dollars no, we're not at war with the US." And the later part of 1944, this directive was reversed, and Hitler gave permission to counterfeit US $100 bills. The act of espionage and political satire at the expense of the German Reich intensified the desire for SS Sturmbannführer Major Alfred Nojux to get back at the British. Nojux was head of the technical division of the Reich's Secret Service. Counterfeit British food and clothing, the ration coupons were considered but rejected as ineffective, even though the German U-boat campaign was creating havoc with Britain's food supply. Reportedly, it was Nozick's assistant, Dr. Albert Langer, who independently came up with a similar plan as the September 18th Berlin meeting participants. Now, Langer suggested to Nozick, suppose we drop money instead, millions and millions of forged pound notes over England. And pardon my pronunciation, right sure, I'm not even going to attempt it. The man placed in charge of the technical production of the counterfeit British notes was St. Sturmbannführer Helmut Nojux. Hitler approved the Nojux for the job as he had all the right qualifications or qualities for an operation such as this, and he was experienced in black operations. He was personally chosen by the Führer to lead an August 31, 1939 secret attack on the German radio station in Gliwice, part of a large clandestine operation called Operation Himmler. This is Poland. His SD men attacked the radio station and left behind executed concentration camp prisoners dressed in Polish army uniforms. It was made to appear that Poland had attacked Germany, and Hitler used this pretense to invade Poland the next day on September 1st, 1939. Nojux was also involved in the kidnapping of 2 British officers in 1939, as well as other acts of arson and assassination. Producing counterfeit currency to destroy the British economy was a perfect assignment for Nojux. Heydrich's Reich's top secret file to Major Nogda stated, "This is not to be a forgery or counterfeiting in the usual sense, but unauthorized facsimile reproduction. The notes must be perfect, or such perfect copy of the original that even the most experienced British banknote experts cannot tell the difference." The job was broken down into 3 separate parts: production of paper, identical to the original, preparation of plates and print notes, identical in color and design, and working out a proper numbering system. Work on the notes began in the spring of 1940. The first subject was to the Bank of England £5 banknote. Technical problems centered on duplicating the paper ink, typeface, watermarks, serial numbers, and in the aging of freshly printed counterfeits. Technical production was given to Major Nojux and the SS master printer, August Petrich, given the job of printing. Work progressed for the winter of 1940-41, until the first 20 of 5-pound British counterfeits made their debut in February 1941. The Bank of England was warned. In November 1939, Paul Sherlopin, a Russian spy operating in Athens, Greece, uncovered the details of the September 18th Berlin meeting. The Bank of England governor, Sir Montague Norman, and other directors known as the court were informed of the plan, and their reaction was to mostly ignore it. The Bank of England refused to publicly acknowledge the existence of counterfeit pound notes, despite specific information provided to them from the agent, Paul Sherlopin. Even though the French police offered an informer who knew the existence of a factory producing 5- and 10-pound counterfeits, Sir Kenneth Pugh at the Bank of England, I'm not sure, I have to check here, and because I'm just going to skip this part here because I can't read it. Sorry, Sir Kenneth Pugh, he was the chief cashier. That's what I was looking for before. Refused knowledge of any problem, saying, and this is incredible, he could not imagine anyone clever enough to match any piece of paper with his signature on it. As a result, the public was not informed that there was a security problem, and the largest successful counterfeiting operation in world history was set to begin. The headquarters of Operation Adverse was the Reicher Heights, pardon my pronunciation again, counterfeiting factory in this classic mansion in Delbruckstrasse 6A, Charlottenburg District, Berlin. The building was called the Devil's Workshop for all the secret espionage documents created there when it was an SD training center. The second floor contained the photographic section, the first floor was administration, and the basement held a 200-ton printing press. August Petrick was selected as the operational printer, our operation printer, assisted by Murdoch and Heinz Gebert, as also working on technical research were Dr. F. Laundo, William Frank, S.D. Nojek, in charge of section AMT, the technical division was an overall charge. It was in this building near Sachsenhausen that the printing plates for the counterfeit British operation notes were engraved onto copper. During Operation Andrus, only the 5-pound and 10-pound notes were made. And there was a hesitation to produce the larger denominations, as they knew these would be examined more closely by the bank tellers. The Spischhausen paper factory in Eberswalde was selected by Nojek to research and develop the special linen paper for the operation. The task was not easy, and Nojek had 20 men assigned to it. The first attempts at matching the linen Bank of England paper did not pass the ultraviolet test, as it fluoresced with a dull glow, and the British paper glowed bright violet. Close match was found using Turkish flax-spade rag paper that had been soiled before bleaching. The genuine notes were printed in rag paper not known to the Germans, so the source was found to be paper or rags that had been used for cleaning tanks, actually, and it had a certain type of oil on them, and before being made into paper. And to appear aged, the banknotes had to be printed with an ink that would age quickly. And they eventually found one that would age after 1 week. Though there's no matching typeface found anywhere in Germany, so they had to make their own. And the security marks incorporated at least 150 security marks on each genuine note a broken line, a nick in a letter, an isolated dot, and these had to be identified and copied. The watermark was a very formidable task, and after months of hard work, it was reproduced without a problem. The counterfeit watermark and the genuine watermark is given in this diagram, and you notice that underneath the left leg of the N, there is a line in the watermark that is curved, and it was straightened in the counterfeit. German efficiency. And again, the serial numbers were, it was a difficult process, but they found a way to make them. And again, the age of the paper paper had to be crumpled, punched, written on, all sorts of things, and that was given to different people to age. And it had to handle the notes of oily hands. One of the difficult areas was the watermark itself, and it had this Britannia design. Probably not the watermark, but the design of the bill itself had the Britannia on it. And if you look at the point of the red arrows, you see that on the left, a little nook or little niche coming out is light colored, and on the one on the right, it is dark colored. And that's how close they were able to get the design between these counterfeits and the genuine. There are other little points of differences as well, but they were extremely well done. The replication, by December 1940, the replication of the genuine design watermark and paper by the German military, although not 100% perfect, was well underway. Pepia certainly would have been amazed at how his signature was so cleverly replicated by the Germans. The rest of the design was also very cleverly done as well. Improvements continued to be made until the full-scale production was ready in late 1942. And on the next page, there is a genuine 5-pound note. And a counterfeit 5-pound note. And if we have them side by side, they're very, very well done. I have difficulty myself telling the difference between them, and I have to go to notes and a little mark I made on the back of the note to tell me the difference, because it's so well done. And this is the example of the Pepia signature. Now you may have a thing that blocks that out, and you click on the X. Pepia would be quite impressed that his signature was so well produced. The original plan presented by Naudix to Heydrich was for Hermann Goering's Luftwaffe to distribute the Bank of England counterfeits by airdropping them over England during their frequent bombing missions. A date of March 41 was scheduled for the air distribution to begin. The overall plan, however, to dominate the sky over England was called Operation Eagle, but as the Luftwaffe began to take heavy losses during the Battle of Britain, it became clear that alternate methods to distribute the counterfeits would be needed. Another method of distributing the counterfeit notes in England was to have them brought in by secret agents delivered by submarine. In 1941, one such attempt failed when a German agent was discovered in Edinburgh, Scotland, with a case full of counterfeits. His rubber raft dropped from a U-boat late at night. The problem was this method, that Britain was highly efficient in detecting and capturing Nazi spies on their soil. Most were quickly apprehended. Heydrich had a reputation for being one of the most brutal Nazi leaders. And second in importance to Heinrich Himmler, he was a leading planner of Hitler's final solution, in which Nazis were attempted to exterminate the entire Jewish population in Europe. September of 1941, Heydrich was appointed Deputy Reichsprotector of Bohemia and Moravia, where his Gestapo and SD agents conducted a brutal crackdown of a Czech resistance movement. In May 42, he was assassinated by Free Czech agents trained by Special Operations Executive in England. And that's from a bubblegum card I was able to find. In April 40, the Bank of England issued a new 10-shilling note and 1-penny note with a security threat in it. In 43, they discontinued issuing any notes higher than £5. In 44, notes of £10 and higher were discontinued. And at 45, at the end of the war, all notes were not accepted as legal tender were called in. The £5 notes received a metal ribbon for security. So this is all took place, but the general population was not aware, and banks around the world were not aware that there was a problem. So the next part of this presentation is how these things were made. And the Operation Andreas had ceased when Heydrich was assassinated. There was a pause for a little bit, and then it continued on as a Operation Bernhard. And Ernest Kaltenbrunner was appointed in charge of the new operation. Kaltenbrunner made a number of changes. The production of 20 and 50-pound notes was initiated, and to handle a higher production, the work was transferred from the RHSD, which was the German military, to use of Jewish prisoners presently being held in concentration camps. The operation was named Operation Bernhard after its new head of production, SS Hauptscharführer Bernhard Kruger. Kruger had proven himself very capable in the production of British banknotes in Operation Andreas. He would continue supervising until the war's end. To be successful, complete secrecy and safety was required. Himmler knew that the Allies would not bomb a concentration camp and chose Oranienburg, just north of Berlin. Oranienburg had been a concentration camp since the 1930s. For some reason, Oranienburg was not found to be suitable, and nearby Sachsenhausen, just north of Berlin, was chosen for the base of Operation Bernhard, and later Operation Waterwave. Waterwave was the stamps that were being produced. On August 23rd, the initial group of 39 Jews assembled by SS Oberführer Dorner of the RSHA was transferred to Sachsenhausen. So 39 prisoners originally. They were selected for these, or had to have these qualifications. They had to be of Jewish descent. They had to have specialized or useful skills, and they had to speak German. The photo is of Moritz Nastern, a Norwegian. A Jewish stereotypographer printed above met the criteria, and he was pulled out of Auschwitz death camp. The initial 39 Jewish prisoners transferred to Sachsenhausen came from Buchenwald, Ravensbrück, Mauthausen, Theresienstadt, and Auschwitz. And while they did not know what fate awaited them at Sachsenhausen, it was clear that their fate would be, what their fate would be if they stayed in the death camps. Their only thought when they arrived in Sachsenhausen was survival. Work will set you free. Prisoners marching through the gates of Sachsenhausen were greeted by that sign. But they did not tell you that if you no longer could work due to poor health, you were quickly executed. And this was the fate of the the prisoners that I listed there. Pardon my pronunciation, so I'll just let them there. So those prisoners were executed because when you got sick, you couldn't go to the hospital because you would come into contact with other prisoners, and they were worried about you talking to them. If you do too much, you were killed. For Operation Bernhardt to be successful, complete secrecy and safety was required. It was made clear to anyone at that level who knew more than what they needed to know would be executed. And that was his plan for all basic war plans. This applied to the prisoners, the camp staff, including the commandant. Sachsenhausen did not know what was going on in the barracks where these people went. And full claim and the full chain of command, no matter what their rank. If you knew too much, or if you talked about it, you were executed. Block 18 at Sachsenhausen was initially selected for the operational Kruger's counterfeit factory, but the operation soon expanded to include Block 19. So 18 on the left and 19 on the right in this picture here, lower right. Other secret projects undertaken at blocks 18 and 19 were the production of forged passports for SS agents, and near the end of the war, the production of espionage parody stamps, Operation Waterwave, and counterfeit US currency. Surrounded by a wooden wall 7 feet high and barbed wire fences in front and behind, blocks 18 and 19, the right side, were so secret that only 1 or 2 officers in the camp knew what was going on there. There is a schematic diagram, and you see various rooms and the blocks 18 and 19 were completely isolated from the rest of the camp. No way anyone outside could observe inside, and inside people could not view or communicate anything outside. What took place in blocks 18 and 19 stayed inside. The counterfeiters at Sachsenhausen, now numbering 140, came from 15 nations and represented 55 trades and professions. Most were Jewish, but others were career criminals that had special skills useful in the operation. The prisoners slept in separate cots, had personal lockers, and could wear civilian clothing. They were even allowed to grow their own hair out, unlike the shaven inmates outside their block. Block 18 and 19 had their own doctor who could treat common medical ailments. However, if a prisoner was required more serious attention and would infect other prisoners, he was taken outside and executed. To keep the morale high, they were told that if they worked well, they would be taken care of after the war. Some knew what being taken care of meant to the likes of the SS, responsible for the extermination of millions of Jews, and had grave concerns. And this is a photograph of some of the folks that was taken after. And there was a movie called The Counterfeiters. Very, very good movie to watch. And it featured some of these people like Solomon Smolenov, who was in the lower left, was in that movie, or a person representing them. The actual movie was quite well done. Okay, now the part of distribution became what was important. So as part of the 41 Berlin-Rome Axis Pact, there was an understanding between Hitler and Mussolini that the Reich Secret Service was not to be operational within Italy. There was a special directive from Hitler and reinforced by the Reich Ministry of Economics. In practice, Kaltenbrunner used the Bernard counterfeits to finance the secret operations in Italy and elsewhere. So A Bank of England 20-pound note produced by Operation Bernard. And there's a number of notes produced. 141,046 10-pound notes. And probably that should have read 20-pound notes. And the 50-pound note is also produced, 89,552. The original intention for the Bank of England counterfeits was to destroy the British economy by airdropping millions of leaflets or millions of pounds over Friedman, like we mentioned. However, the Battle of England and Operation Eagle did not progress as well as he mentioned before. And so they go to Plan B, which was approved by Hitler, was to use the currency, counterfeit currency, to finance Hitler's secret service operations worldwide. Despite the Reich Minister of Economics, Walter Funk, forbidding the SS from distributing the counterfeits within Axis territories, they did just the opposite. And in 1941, the pact between Hitler and Mussolini rejecting SS espionage activities inside Italy and Operation Bernard had space of operations in Italy at a city near Marina, or the city of Marina. And it was this, in this 11th century castle titled Schloss Labers, that they confiscated from its owners, and they used it for storing all sorts of loot from the that they purchased with counterfeit notes. Gold, silver, jewels, artworks were all collected and stored at Schloss Labers and forwarded to Himmler's SS headquarters. Again, using the counterfeit notes, sometimes to pay for them, and sometimes they just took them. Himmler also wanted Schwenn's, the operation here by Colonel Schwenn, to assist in distributing his Operation Waterway parody stamps, which I'll be talking about later. But Schwenn refused, stating to Kaltenblumer, "I won't have anything to do with such stupid playing." But he was a military person, first of all. And eventually, SS agent Willy Groben, tasked with laundering Bernard counterfeits in Italy, found it difficult to keep up with Berlin's heavy distribution demands. So he was able to receive assistance from his friend who had who owned a luxury seaside resort in Abruzzo. From there, he and his friend directed numerous Bernard laundering operations in Italy, Fiume, Austria, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, and Yugoslavia. Schwenn was bestowed the rank of major and used his yacht, the Aurora, to smuggle exchange counterfeit British notes with the Yugoslav partisans. It was fortunate, actually, for Mussolini that the SS was operating in Italy because he was overthrown, and in July 1943 there were two different plans by Germany to locate him, because the Italian government put him away. One, devised by Himmler, called Operation Mars, was based on an occult mixture of seers, soothsayers, fortune tellers, astrologers, mediums, clairvoyants, pendulum diviners, pulled from concentration camps to tell where Mussolini was being kept. Another plan used by SS agent Friedman to spend 50,000 Operation Bernard currency pounds to bribe Italian officials in Naples. And the plan that was successful, of course, was using the counterfeit money to bribe Italian officials. Another used for the money was when Mussolini's Minister of Foreign Affairs and son-in-law was also imprisoned, and his Count Galazio Ciano de Cortolazzo, his wife Etta, and their 3 children were rescued from the government using 25,000 pounds of Operation Currency, Operation Bernard currency, used as bribes in the rescue. One of the strangest stories of World War II is the Yugoslav partisan resistance was trained and equipped by British Special Operations executives. The results were a disaster for the Nazi military and Italian police. Right, Secret Service Operation Bernard Friedman suggested offering the partisans counterfeit British banknotes in return for their excess weapons. They had more weapons supplied by the British and the Americans than they actually could use, and they needed other things in return. So SS Obergruppenführer Ernest Kaltenbrunner, in charge of the Italian police, approved the operation, and surprisingly, the partisans agreed to the exchange. The partisans badly needed food, medical supplies, and clothing, and would use the banknotes on the black market. Examples of these weapons are illustrated in these stamps. The operation went well until Italy surrendered on September 8, 1943. And the next day, Agent Friedman was killed in a partisan road ambush. It's ironic, though, that the excess weapons and medical supplies airdropped into Yugoslavia by SOE and the OSS were bought from the partisans by the SS using counterfeit British currency. During these airdrops, the OSS and SOE used the Douglas C-47 Skytrain, featured above, and sometimes a submarine used for smaller shipments. The SS, there's no honor among thieves. The SS had absolutely no qualms in paying the Yugoslav partisans with counterfeit British Bank of England currency. After all, what the partisans did not know would not hurt them? What the Nazis did not know is that in other transactions, the partisans were paying the SS with counterfeit Serbian notes, which they had manufactured. A sample of counterfeit 500 dinara is pictured above. Turkey was a neutral country for most of the war, and it was constantly being courted by allies and Axis powers for military and diplomatic favors. And I call it a wasp's nest for spies. The situation is ripe for spies to do their trade, but Walter Schellenberg required hard cash to operate his spy operation in Turkey. The best source of operation or available currency was Operation Bernhard counterfeits. Thousands of British pound notes, mostly counterfeits, were paid to Nazi informants and agents for information. Istanbul and Ankara, the next slide, saw a heavy correspondence to and from Germany, England, Russia, and the United States. Turkey was also one of 4 neutral countries chosen by Schellenberg to distribute the Operation Waterwave espionage, counterfeit, and parody stamps. The other 3 were Sweden, Portugal, and Switzerland. And Schellenberg was able to use the existing distribution system developed by Operation Bernhard agents. And those stamps, again, we'll be talking about them in the next section in January. And a cover from Turkey mailed at the time. In mid-1943, an Albanian Turk named Ezra Basna was employed as a personal valet and butler to the British ambassador at the British Embassy in Ankara, Turkey. What Sir Hugh Kuchno-Hugeson did not realize was that his employee was also a German spy codenamed Cicero. Using keys made from wax impressions, Cicero was able to open the ambassador's safe and dispatch box from his bedside table. He examined and photographed between 130 and 150 secret and most secret telegrams and files, one of which contained the detailed summary of the 1943 Tehran Conference. Others contained Allied decisions on D-Day, letters to try to persuade the Turks to join the Allies, a list of arms sent to the USSR, and summaries of every Allied military and diplomatic conference at the time. At first, General von Papen did not believe Cicero was genuine, as the information he offered seemed too incredible to be true. Bazina was suspected of being a double agent for the Allies, but eventually he was accepted as telling the truth. For all his work, Bazina wanted a good German Leica camera and money. The camera was easy to obtain, and the money was even easier to obtain. For all the top secrets, Bazina turned over to this SS handler, which is Amosiech. He was paid 300,000 British pounds, almost all in Operation Bernhard counterfeits. His spy operation lasted till March 1944, when an operative of U.S. master spy Alan Dulles reported that there was an agent in the British embassy working for the Germans. Bazina disappeared shortly afterwards and was able to squander his entire Bernhard fortune on wine, women, and bad business dealings. The most ironic thing, though, was he died in 1970 after trying unsuccessfully to sue the German government for paying him in counterfeit currency. Good luck with that. So that ends the first part of this. I apologize again for my
simply fantastic. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start bringing you over so that way you could ask your questions directly to Ken and Herb. I think you're unmuted now, Herb?
I just was told to unmute, so I did. All right. Can I mention a few things that again, as Ken spoke, I made little notes to myself, and it really has not much to do with anything except I know so darn much about this stuff that he'd say things and that would kind of ring a bell. And the banknote, I am Hitler's toilet paper, or really ass paper, I thought I should mention that the OSS and the British both actually produced toilet paper as propaganda. And I've got a lot of pieces in my collection, and it would have for instance, it would have the face of the Fuhrer on it. And the idea was the German would wipe his butt on Hitler. So for what that's worth, Ken talked a lot about the forged British notes. I like to collect them with a hand stamp sort of. I like the ones that said Fauschung, you know. And so I always went out of my way to get the ones that had some kind of a stamp from Czechoslovakia or Poland or wherever that showed that they had figured out that that was a fake. They were talked about the pendulum. Pendulum's an interesting thing because it seemed like such a foolish thing, and yet a lot of people believed in it. The Germans used pendulum trying to find British convoys. They would stand over a map and concentrate on convoys and hope that the pendulum would point to where they were. And both the Americans and the British in the desert in North Africa used pendulums to try to find water. And of course, they also used dowsing sticks. That was very popular in the desert to try to find fresh water. And I think, well, I'll get two last little comments. He mentioned the C-47 and gave the proper name for it, the Skytrain, but nobody called it that in the military. And I started off in Air Force and ended up in the Army. That was a Goonie bird. And everybody understood the C-47 was a Goonie bird. And my last comment is about the counterfeit Serbian money. And Ken showed one. And it's curious to point out that the Americans apparently counterfeited Serbian banknotes too. I don't have any proof of it. I've never seen a document, but what I have found is 2 or 3 families of airmen when they died, in their estate was found Serbian banknotes. And in every case, they were told that these banknotes had been forged by the Americans in case they went down over Yugoslavia. And these are just odd things that little bells that went off my head as Ken spoke. And that's all I got.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, go ahead.
About 25 or 30 years ago, the British produced a TV show called Private Schultz. It's about these British counterfeits the Germans were producing. So they get him out of jail because he's a counterfeiter or something, and a lot of his buddies as well to produce these things. And they drop Schultz over England with this huge canister of all these counterfeit British notes. And it's a comedy because it's all these funny things that happen to him when he's trying to get rid of all this currency. I have a copy on DVD. It's actually a very funny series.
I saw that at the time.
Toward the end of the war, Germans still had a lot of this counterfeit currency, and they were afraid that if the war ended, they were going to get caught with it. So they took it down to Austria and dumped it into a lake called Toplitz.
It's still coming up.
T-O-P-L-I-T-Z. And that's 61 miles south of Salzburg. And that's a very deep and cold lake. And I don't know what they put it in. I think maybe suitcases. And divers have still been bringing stuff up from there over the years until fairly recently. And if you go to Lake Toplitz, there's all these, they have these panels outside that explain it in German and English, what happened there. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. The second part of this is going to be covering the following, and one is the production and distribution of the propaganda and espionage stamps, but also the what happened to the Operation Bernhard near the end of the war, and it's quite a fascinating story. It covers the things that you were just talking about and many more as well. And there is some slides that I'll be showing in not too long, a little bit of a teaser as to what's going to take place in January. The other part of the story is what took place right after the war, when there was a plot of retaliation by extreme Jewish fighters to retaliate against Germany. And if you caught a National Geographic documentary on the Nakam or the Avengers, it'll tell you basically what that was about, and so on. But all that stuff about Lake Toplitz and the freeing of the prisoners at Sachsenhausen and where they ended up by the American Army, that's all covered in the second section. And so I'm going to try to keep most of the questions today to what we covered so far today, and leave the stamps and the afterward part to January.
Okay. Did you know that Schloss Charlottenburg is now a museum? When I was there in '92, it was a museum for what was it, archaeology, or is it? No, I forget what exactly. They have a great big map showing the migration of the German tribes in the Roman times.
That was new to me.
And I wanted to ask, it sounds like the notes that were produced by Bernhard were within Europe, using for operations in Europe. How many found their way into Britain, and by what routes?
Can I make a comment, Ken?
Yeah, go ahead.
Curiously, they didn't do the damage they wanted. If you read a lot of reports from the time, it says that those notes actually helped the British economy. And that seems insane, but things had to be bought, things had to be built, money was needed. And a lot of that circulating of money was used to rebuild Britain after the war. And it's such an odd kind of story, but apparently it was very helpful to the British. And it's going back to the lake, as we did a moment ago, that stuff was coming up for years and years. It was floating to the surface. And there's been a couple of people killed there too. That was a little bit of a scandal. There were divers going down looking for gold and money. And it's hinted that there was criminality involved, but there have been a number of people killed there.
Yeah, and we will be going into that in the second part in January as well.
Did anything happen by way of to the chief cashier of the bank who made that foolish statement about no one was ever going to forge a signature?
You know, that's a really good question. And I haven't got an answer for that, but he's sort of typical that to get to high places in Britain at the time, it wasn't based on your brains as much as your lineage or, you know, who your daddy was. He was a good example of that. And God forbid the military of Britain in World War I was very similar as well, it seems. And so I'll leave it at that. But that's an interesting one, and I'm going to try to find the answer to that.
I welcome you guys to turn on your cameras so we could see you and talk to you. I thought that, yeah, I learned an awful lot today, Ken. And I think.
Well, there's still lots more to learn about this, and that's for sure. This is only scratching the surface of this, and I'm sure as the story gets more and more known, more material will come out.
I'm curious about the crew who did the men who did the counterfeiting. Now there's ability, there's real talent there. So maybe even artistic talent. Did any of them go on after the war to be successful artists? I mean, they clearly had something going on if they were able to.
In some of the research books that I was able to get a hold of, it did talk about some of the people who survived, and incredibly, most survived. The people in the 2 blocks, 18 and 19 in Sachsenhausen, there was a list of the ones that did not, the ones that, particularly of those that got sick, but the ones that survived, there is some material in the references about what happened to some of them, but I didn't include that in the story, and I'd have to go back and take a look at the references again.
I think 1 or 2 of them wrote books, if I'm not incorrect. I think I might have one in my bookcase in there.
Yep. And I know I remember reading about the Norwegian fellow that was I had a photograph of as well.
Because it just seemed to me that this operation involves some real talent, and I'm just curious how them became really well known for their work after.
Well, remember that the plates for the 5 and the 10-pound notes were made by the Army in that building that was depicted. And so that was an SD operation, and they produced the paper and they produced the watermarks as well. So a lot of the talent then was provided by the military, the same people that produced fake passports, travel documents, etc., as well. So.
Oh, by the way, the TV series, that was Ian McKellen played, I think, the Commandant, and he was really good. The first time I saw Ian McKellen, he was really good. Ian Richardson, the great pecan guy.
If you can get the Counterfeiters on DVD or download it, Netflix might have it. That is a very good movie to watch because it's a historical fiction, but it's quite close to what actually happened. But it leaves off with the production. It doesn't get into the distribution at all, which is just as interesting. But fascinating story. And so there's 2 documentaries: the Counterfeiters and the National Geographic documentary on the Nakam.
Lawrence, are you out there? Valerie, you have a question?
Yes. Do collectors pay big money today for these fake money?
I'd like
Oh,
to.
yes.
No, it says you.
Oh, worth much more than the real notes. A good fake is quite a bit more than a genuine note, generally speaking.
Right, thanks.
I have quite a few of the notes on all the values and different signatures. But interestingly, one of the things I found most difficult to get was a genuine note of the time. You know, the large size, bills, because they were hauled in after the war and destroyed. It still was a secret. The Bank of England did not let it out that there was this currency out there in all these different countries and banks where the counterfeits were distributed, and because that would have been disastrous for the economy. But they quietly replaced these large size bills, the genuine and the counterfeits, with the small size bills version. So it was for me very hard to get a hold of a genuine bill, and I only got one, which is the £5 one that I showed earlier.
Yeah, Ken, let me mention just the value of the fake stuff. And this is, now we got to go to stamps and something you're going to talk about in the future, I'm sure. But I'm talking about the OSS sheet, the Hitler skull sheet, the Hitler birthday sheet, made in Bern. And that sheet, as a leaflet, is very limited. But as a leaflet, it's worth maybe to a war collector, might be worth $50, $75, $100. As a stamp collector, the first one I was offered was $34,000. Wow. A simple propaganda sheet showing a Hitler birthday sheet, which you should all know if you've studied German stamps. You all know it. I've written about it pretty much in my article on Operation Cornflakes, and I showed them and I talk a little bit about them. But it's just 34,000. And then for a while, there was at one time they thought there was only 4 in existence. But I've watched them carefully and I've studied them and chased them. And I'm up to about 26 of them now. And the price in the last couple of years has dropped to about $10,000 or $12,000. So it's actually come into range of let's say the well-off collector. But it's pretty rare. And well, I'm not going to mention, Ken knows what I was going to say, but I won't because I don't talk about other people. But there's another version of that, a green version, which for a year we thought was fake, even though the real stamp sheet is green. And theoretically, the green OSS one should be the real one because it's the proper color. But we've always thought it was fake. And we've only seen about 6 of them. And they've never got much over $3,000, $4,000. But there's a lot of question about them being authentic. And in a lot of collections in museums where there should be a red one, they'll have a green one with a little comment. They were out of reds. So we to this day don't know if the green ones are real or if the green ones were made simply to fill a spot where the red one should be. But it's a really interesting subject.
I just want to acknowledge Lawrence Malkin is here. He's one of the authors that you referenced in your presentation. Thank you for joining us.
It's great. Yeah, excellent writer, excellent book.
Yep. I'd like to commend.
Now we have a teaser. I don't know how that's going to be shown.
Well, you know,
for January.
Yeah, well, let's save it for January. I'll put it on the website. How's that, Ken?
Sure.
So, and it was definitely a very interesting topic, not knowing much about the war or counterfeiting myself. I was just fascinated that they could do something like that.
Well, we still do it. We did it in Vietnam. We made counterfeit Vietnam currency and sent it up north. We did it in Korea. We made counterfeit curry and sent it up north. The interesting thing about Vietnam is we made very good copies of the 1, 2, and 5 dong note with little propaganda off to the right. North Vietnam screamed at us, "You're counterfeiting and sending money up here to destroy our economy." And we said, no, it's got a little propaganda tag to the right. You can see it's propaganda. It's not a counterfeit, but anybody with a pair of scissors can make it a counterfeit.
I'm a little curious about currency, especially over the course of a war. Isn't there a point at the war is like, I don't want paper. I need something that's got some value on it, because when this thing is over,
well, let me ask you a question. Every time there's an emergency in America, any little thing that happens, and the strange ones come out of the bushes, and what do they say? Buy gold, buy gold. Gold will always be there. And every time I see that idea, but get something solid, get gold, I ask myself, who's going to give up a loaf of bread for a gold coin? You know, I mean, it just, apparently there's a whole group of people that just want to have cash. They want to have something solid that they think is valuable. And I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. And you'll see it every time there's an emergency. You'll see TV ads, buy gold, put gold into your IRA, get something solid and substantial. And it's baloney. Because if you bought gold in the old days, I mean, you'd still be sitting on it. They always talk about that big jump after gold went legal, when it jumped up. I think it used to be $400 an ounce, and it had this big jump. And I always go back a certain number of years. But if you had gold in a bank for 30 years, you wouldn't have made a penny, because there's no interest paid on gold in a safe deposit box. But people will always go for that, and I have no idea why.
When it's on a ring, it increases in value.
Did they ever make any coins? Was it coins ever minted, Ken? Or was it just paper?
I believe the OSS produced coins for the Philippines. Those are the only ones that I'm aware of. And these were counterfeit coins to pay the resistance. They were able to get the resistance to fight the Japanese with a lot of ferocity, but if they were paid. And so the OSS produced counterfeit coins, well, as far as I can research.
The coins, not so much. I know Radio Free Europe had little fake coins, and I know there were coins for Cuba too. But the USA, as Ken knows and has talked about a little bit, we did 4 different Philippine banknotes. We did a Burmese 10 rupee. We did a Malayan $10. We did 3 different Chinese puppet banks, and we forged Thailand. And of course, at the same time, the British were forging Burma, Malaya, and Thailand too. And we also were in the process of doing Japanese and French Indochina, but those apparently, now there's a debate there, because I've got files from the OSS that show that they had saved the Japanese notes, and we've seen parodies. There are 4 different Japanese notes with anti-inflation propaganda on the back, but we're told they were never made. And yet the family of the guy that was forging them says, yes, he used to sit around and used to laugh about all the Japanese money he made, but none of that has come to light yet. So that we have to just call that rumor at the time. But we forged a lot of money, and we don't admit it. The American claim is that we have never forged money.
I'd like to jump back to trying to identify some of the original currencies in the war, and I've got a strip of about 30 World War II banknotes, all of a value of $1 or above. And they're called short snorters. They're all stuck together with old Scotch tape. And the Ferry Command pilots used to carry these with them when they flew. And the countries they flew over, these at the time in 42, 43, 45, they had to get one of these local currency notes, which may be fake, being military, and in there or real, but they're all Scotch taped together. And this gives them a sense of legitimacy of the time. And the strip I have is maybe 30, 20, a couple of dozen notes from all around the world, from Africa to North America to South America and Europe. And it's a very interesting source of comparing notes of the time, whether they're in use, whether they're genuine or legitimate, but the airmen collected them and signed them, because if they didn't have this roll of the countries they flew over when they went for a drink, if they didn't have that roll with them, they had to buy a drink for all their buddies.
They still do
that. That was very, very interesting, because my dad was a commander of an air base in Australia during World War II, and I have in my possession a number of these short snorters, you call them, and I never knew anything about them other than the name. So I wonder, do you have an explanation you could email me or on those, Robert?
Okay. Let's see. Could you get, what's a good way to transfer our emails there?
Just send it to the British Empire Study Group and we'll go ahead and forward it on to Ken.
Yep. Okay. Thanks very much. I'll get my link through to you. Is it Dale?
Dale Egan, yes.
Yep. Okay, Dale, I'll also send you some examples. I can hold one up here. This one is, it's in South America, Suriname, and it's got Russian writing on it because they're flying airplanes from the factory in North Carolina down through the South Atlantic into South Russia.
Yeah, I was always so confused. I mean, these would be quite long. I mean, they were really long and had all this Scotch tape on them. And
that's right. That's exactly what it is.
What the heck was going on?
Yeah.
Yep.
Guys, they still do that today, and not just the Air Force. Soldiers do it. Anybody that goes to a country always picks up a piece of currency. If you tape them together, the fellows that you're with, people in your squad, people in your platoon, sign it. I've seen dozens of them, and they're just as popular today as they were in the war. That hasn't changed.
Oh.
Yep. I've got a picture of that happening with the fellows with Ferry Command Dorval inside the belly of a transport being flown there being flown back, their pilots being returned home in an air taxi. And they're signing this long strip of the bills in the belly of the taxi aircraft coming into Caribbean, home from Africa to Canada and US. Very interesting. And if you got them on the plastic strip, they're representative of the time. And there's your reference base.
Oh, so interesting.
Yeah, and yes, Bob had a note from the Dutch government in exile as well that he showed me. That was kind of interesting as well.
Going back to the Philippine coins, we did not counterfeit Philippine coins. We struck coins for the Philippines at the Denver Mint and sent them over there for the Philippine government to use. There was no reason for us to be counterfeiting Philippine coins because they were a territory of the United States at the time.
I'm aware of those, but this was to the resistance group at the time, not going to the government. to the resistance fighters, and they needed to supply them with currency, because that's what the only thing that they would get them to fight vigorously.
That's a whole separate field, by the way. Is a Philippine guerrilla currency. There are books and books of that. I've got a half a dozen, and also stamps. So not a whole lot of them, but there were 2 or 3 stamps that were actually produced by the various Philippine rebel movements, or I should say guerrilla movements, I guess. So they're very popular. Fellas, I'm going to bail out because my wife says she got dinner in there and she's yelling at me. So I'm out of here. Thanks for
people wanted to. You're going to have to send me a scan of your sheet notes, because they were everyone wants to see those again.
Well, you tell me what you want to see. Okay.
The sheet notes, if you could.
Oh, that's in an article. I wrote an article about the OSS Washington. Look me up. Do the same thing I do. I'm so old and I've got so many articles. I just put Friedman, Psy Warrior, and then what I want to look at, and then I can find it myself. Friedman, Psy Warrior, Washington, D.C., and you'll actually see the sheet, and you'll see a whole bunch of stamps that we forged, and you'll see a whole some money we forged. And that's right on the internet for all to see, PsyWarrior.com.
It's on our website too, Herb. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for your service. I mean, thank you.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
It's Veterans Day today. Thank you, Sergeant Major.
Yeah.
Herb, I don't know if not all of you know, but Herb is the foremost expert on this material. And he was kind enough to, write to me, and I wrote to him, and way back in the early 1980s, but his writing started in the late 1960s that I'm aware of, or at least that's the start of my articles by him.
Scott's APS,
earlier.
GPS, and then we got into money, and then it became the I forget, the paper money journal. So I've probably got 100 articles.
He was certainly writing at a time when the Official Secrets Act was saying, shh, don't talk about this as well. And so I found it very difficult to get information, and his was the first pieces of information I was able to get.
Yeah. That's amazing. He figured out how to get off Zoom. He was so funny. We got him on Zoom, and we weren't going to let him go because
it is a learning process. It is a learning process for sure.
Am I correct in saying that if you're going to be counterfeiting someone's currency, you have to identify which denominations to target, because people don't because they're just more commonly used, and people won't look at it so closely?
I'm not sure of the question. If you're going to counterfeit German currency?
No, if you count anyone's currency, it's like, because I know there was a point where if you gave someone a $100 bill in New York City, they'd be like, whoa, now it's really common. I'm thinking that there are some denominations that this doesn't attract as much attention because everyone's spending that.
Well, then, yes, an Operation Andreas, which is basically an operation of the German military, they only did the 5 and 10 pound notes at that time because they thought that the 20 and the 50, and they even thought of doing the 100 pound notes, would bring too much attention to them. It's the same today. If you want to get caught counterfeiting money, then you counterfeit a $100 bill. If you counterfeit a $10 bill, chances are you're going to go on and on and on without it being detected, because who's going to look very hard at a $10 bill? But the bank tellers, if a 100 or a 50 comes their way, they sure look.
Yeah. Let's not have a program on how to counterfeit money, right? That will get too much attention.
I have a question for you, for the people here. I put this presentation together originally as a exhibit, a possible exhibit. So the original pages were written up as exhibit pages. I have no idea whether this type of material or the way, the content is presentable as a philatelic exhibit. One of my concerns was how many stamps there are if you put it in a philatelic exhibit. I did a little tally though, and I found that what you saw today was 92 stamps, 16 postcards, 17 pieces of currency, 16 photos, and 5 other. And the total presentation is 230 stamps. So do you feel that there's enough stamps in this to be included in a philatelic exhibit?
I do personally. Actually, that image you had of the assassination of Heydrich, where did you get that? That was nice.
That's from a bubblegum card. And I couldn't find anything else that showed the assassination other than there's a movie, very good movie about the Czech underground assassinating him as well. But that's the challenge of this, is to be able to tell the story and find ephemera, I think you call it, ephemera, that's it. That word too. Because this stuff doesn't appear on stamps, so it has to be indirectly linking to the story.
That looked like the kind of thing that looked the kind of thing that you'd flip for in a schoolyard, because it's a really vivid piece of pop art.
John, you had a question?
Yes, well, not so much a question, but more of a comment on what Ken just mentioned about the balance between stamps, ephemera, covers. I think the important thing is whenever you do a presentation like this, you have to tell the story. And I don't think you can tell the story with any one of those philatelic materials. You have to have a variety of stamps, of covers, of maps, postcards. It really brightens up and illustrates the story that you're trying to tell. And that story that you told today was absolutely fascinating. Thank you.
I would agree with that.
Thank you very much.
Yep, I would agree with that. And I think the trend today is getting more and more towards the story. And sometimes the stamps aren't enough, and sometimes the story isn't enough, but the stamps sort of tie it all together and round it out with all the other aspects. So I think this business of growing just from showing perforations and watermarks, I think the new way of going at it is going to be more and more prevalent, and I look forward to that.
I think there's always a case for classical philately and postal history, but I think there is a trend now, and in the UK we call it social philately, whereby you combine all these different materials to tell the story. But there is still a place.
Is that a class? Do they judge them?
Yes, it is a class, social philately. I think it's one of the international classes now. It's an extension of, well, it's a combination of, well, how should we put it? Of postcards, postal history. You can illustrate it by thematic stamps. It's a wonderful.
Okay, that's what I.
It's a really
that's what I needed to know.
And I think Ken's show today was a classic piece of social philately.
I have the word you need is amalgam, I think.
Yeah.
If I might jump in, I can see it was a marvelous presentation. I'm fascinated by this sort of material, particularly the stamps. And I see that it has been an exhibit. And I've got a feeling that we're missing something, because Ken's knowledge obviously extends beyond what is written on the page there in the words in which he made up the exhibition. So for me, I would find it even more interesting if, as you went through it, Ken, you could add any further comments or commentary on what we see there, which would help us to understand and to gain more insight into this material.
Well, that will be in part 2 in January.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you can see the screen right now.
Let me go.
Share the screen. You could go ahead and share the screen.
Oh,
Ken.
Okay.
This is a test.
Now,
So we'll talk you through the green button in the center.
I'm at full screen, and I'm at full screen, and there's no opportunity to get small.
You got it. I know that's Mr. Savage. We're going to kick you off. Hold on. Is that you? Who's sharing? This is Chris's screen. Okay, we're going to kick Chris off. Ken, if you could try hitting the green share. Do you see the controls?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, I get full screen right now and nothing else.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get your presentation up.
Try pushing escape, and it goes from full screen to less.
Okay, that helps. Okay. Well,
in the gap, can I just say Bob Fogel or Fogel? If you want to check chat, I sent you some messages.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Let's see if I could do this here. Hold on. No.
In the meantime, Ken, I'd love to see the Hydra piece that you spoke of, because I came late.
He's sharing. He has it. Okay.
All right. So you're able to see?
Yes.
Okay. This is a little bit of what the next session is going to be on. It talks about espionage stamps, stamps used by the SOE, the OSS, for their agents, but they didn't want to bring attention to themselves if they were mailing out propaganda leaflets inside Germany, or that sort of thing. And you couldn't go into a post office and ask for 2,000 or 3,000 stamps and before sending out some leaflets. Another use was clandestine correspondence between the agents themselves, so that if you received a letter, if you were in the French underground and the letter said, you open it up and it said, Jacques, we're meeting under the Ypres Bridge at 2 a.m., bring your dynamite, all that sort of stuff. And if it didn't have the particular stamp that you knew how to identify, and in this case, just underneath the right-hand counterfeit, there's a white mark underneath the figure's eye. If it didn't have that, you would say, this is a Gestapo trick. You would take the letter down to your local Gestapo headquarters and say, Herr Gubensuppen, whatever, I received this letter in the mail. I have no idea what it's about. I'm turning it over to you to investigate because it's the right thing to do. Heil Hitler and all that sort of stuff. And so it was a very, very clever way of the agents to communicate, and the Germans never found out about it during the war. These were German stamps produced by Special Operations Executive for the same purpose. So they they produced these stamps for largely for France, and then for German people inside German agents as well. And the OSS did something very similar, and these were produced by them. And these were put on top, or put onto sacks of mail, or mail that was dropped over Austria and Germany and near, and they were disguised to look like real, sacks of mail. If they were dropped near a train, the idea was that the train was bombed or whatever during the raid, and a sack of mail fell out, and then it would be distributed. Along with the stamps for their agents, there were parody stamps, propaganda items, such as what we have here. This is where Sergeant Friedman is so expert on. And they made ridicule of various aspects of the SS and the German government, military, or try to bring suspicion onto their leaders. Himmler was infuriated with this thing, particularly since he was sometimes at the very top, or he was the target, and so they retaliated by producing stamps of George VI, and very subtle changes. The rose in the upper left has got a hammer and sickle in the middle of it. The top of the crown is the Star of David, and a similar star in the thistle on the right. And the 3D at the bottom is the sickle. The idea was that they bring suspicion from the British populace about their connection to the Soviets. Problem is, the design changes were so subtle that it was lost to most people, and it wasn't blatant enough. And so
I was wondering if that worked. I was wondering if those things worked. They seemed like, what? What am I?
They didn't work all that well. And we go on to the end of the war, and some of the things that some of the folks were giving questions of earlier about what happened to these bills and how they were hidden and disposed of, and they were thrown into lakes and rivers and things like that. And this is I think this Mauthausen, just prior to the Patton's army coming in and liberating the prisoners. And there's a homemade American flag in the center left a little bit there, and it was just, these were very, very lucky people at that time, because the camps were left abandoned, and virtually all of the people doing the counterfeit currency and stamps were able to get to freedom as well.
Just as an aside, I hope that makeshift American flag isn't on display someplace, because that sounds like that has a story, of a moving story right there.
Well, it's there.
I mean, it is there, but in a museum someplace, like you say.
Oh, I see. Where that flag is, I have no idea. I certainly hope it was saved, and it was. And so the story in January talks about the unit and pictures of the American soldiers that were liberating the camp, and not just American soldiers, there's British, Canadian soldiers as well. The other part of this story goes on to what's happened after the war. And there was a group of people who escaped from the concentration camps, and they formed a body of fighters called the Nakam, or the Avengers. They were very upset about the Nuremberg trials not having the effect of justice. Not enough SS were found, even brought to trial, and we go into that. And a group of these people here would go seek out and find SS officers and execute them. They even came as far as Winnipeg, Canada, where they found a person there and did the same. And there was a group of them, though, that went further than that, and that was to devise a plan where they would kill 6 million Germans by poisoning the water in 6 German cities. And so I'm telling the story of how that happened, who helped them with the plan, how they got their poison, and parts of it were unsuccessful and parts of it were successful. And it's a fairly dramatic story as well. So that's coming on part 2.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, is there how much of this, to what degree, I had heard stories about how there were trainloads of, the Germans collected, people's silver, sterling, their silver sets and their plates from Jewish households, and that American officers would actually requisition that for their own use because they just liked eating, they liked eating off of nice plates. How much
different story, but I don't have any details of that. I've heard similar things.
And the other one I'm interested in is I've been noticing on the auction sites is that right after the war, when I guess there were just not a lot of stamps around, overprints on German stamps being used. And that'd be something I probably end up collecting because they have the Hitler image and they have the overprint on that. I guess we have to use a stamp, and we don't like the Hitler picture, but we got to do something.
To find one that is genuine is a real task. I have hundreds of them from different towns and cities, and not a single one is genuine.
I wouldn't be surprised if they are.
In fact, Michelle actually delisted them because there are so many counterfeits. So if you see some of these, don't pay a lot of money for them unless they have been expertized by the German Philatelic Society.
Well, to me,
they're the only group.
You counterfeit something that you don't counterfeit a schlock painting. You counterfeit a good painting. And you don't counterfeit a weak story. You counterfeit a good story. So I'm doing it for the story that the counterfeiters decided to ride on, not the.
Well, the post-war overprinted Hitler stamps, though, that's an area, if you're looking for genuine, you're going to pay an awful lot of money for a genuine if you can find it.
Yeah,
it's one of those things, if you see it on eBay, it's probably too good to be true. Don't pay any more than $1 for one.
I'm sticking to the Stamp Auction Network when I see it. Because
Stamp Auction Network, don't pay any more than $1 for one.
Okay. Back to something earlier. I want to find out who does social philately, because that tends to be where I'm at. I found an Italian perfin, and I looked up the company, ended up looking up Italian tax records and the congressional record to find out how the history of this company, and it's it's commercial history. And so I am curious about where I would run those stories by, because that's something I do with Perfins. I look up the story of the company. I end up going far afield of the stamp.
Yeah, that's good.
John,
that's an excellent idea. I can't help you with it, but it's certainly more interesting.
I have a small collection, a small social philosophy exhibit. It's about two guys who met in Cambridge, and they ended up going on the British Empire Antarctic expedition to Grahamland. And I can tell a fascinating story on that for about 20 minutes, and it's really interesting putting together all this different stuff and reading the backgrounds of these different characters that are within the story.
Exactly. Yeah.
We may try AAPE, the American the Exhibitors Society.
Okay.
I'll try to get you that information. Yeah, the AAPE. I distribute their awards, and of course, it's the we have a women's exhibitors, which really isn't all women, but they help you form your exhibit and describe it. But I'm not sure if they do the social philatelity. But I'm happy to check for you.
If I can do like a teaser, the next essay, and I hope it's going to get into Perfect Society, is about Somerville Brothers, the guys who made K shoes. I was looking it up. 1842, this 21-year-old borrows 300 pounds from his mother, and he's got one room in a mill. 1848, his brother joins him with 500 pounds. In 1867, they're doing a limited partnership announcement with a capitalization of 160,000 pounds. And Winston Churchill's favorite teacher was a member of the Somerville family. So I got all that off of the Perfin.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Anyone have any other comments on this Veterans Day? Do we have any veterans out there?
Yes, ma'am.
Bob, Joseph. Oh, terrific. Oh, Ken, complete.
Well, I don't know if you can call it. I was in the militia. Okay. 26th Field Artillery.
Okay. Rich Kaplan, where were you?
Shiloh, Manitoba.
Oh, wow.
I was drafted out of law school, and at the very highest call of the Vietnam War, my orders came down, and they're telling me I'm going. It's an APO address. They tell me I'm going straight to Vietnam. No advanced training, no nothing. Finally, somebody got out a postal directory, and I was going to Fairbanks, Alaska, where I spent 2 years.
Oh.
56 below the day I got there.
Wow. Oh. That's where my brother is right now. He's winterizing the house.
I don't know which is worse.
I know.
Going to Vietnam or Alaska.
There were plenty of people putting in for transfers from, they called it the Form 1049, from Alaska to go to Vietnam. They couldn't take it.
Ron, where did you serve? Ron Leith? I don't hear you.
Which okay, I'm on mute.
Yep, Ron Leith.
Ah, no, I wasn't in the Army, but I did see a picture of Ken when he was in the Army, and he was the skinniest guy I've ever seen.
A 28-inch waist.
Okay, my brother was in the Army.
That's a distant memory.
Oh, well, thank you for your service.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you call today Veterans Day. In the UK, we call it Armistice Day because it's the day of the armistice.
We used to call it that. We called it that until the 50s.
Okay.
Well, why did we change it?
Because of the uniform federal holiday act or something like that.
Mark Stein was saying there's a difference between the British poppy and the Canadian poppy. I think the different organizations, and you can actually tell the Canadian poppy and the British poppy based on the design.
Thank you, Mary.
But I couldn't see that on it. I wasn't able to find that.
Well, Michael has one. Oh, look at that. Hold on. Well, let me see if I could do this here. Hold on. Let me give a spotlight. And let me give, where's my poppy? Hold on.
Here's the Canadian one.
There's the Canadian one. And I'm looking for the other one. And of course, I am not good at this right now. Here. Oh, hold on. I just passed it.
This is a
hold on. There we go. We could have a poppy contest.
Oh, that's a Canadian one.
Yeah.
This is a UK one, although I'm not in the UK, as you know.
Well, mine is a UK pin.
I think a lady named Moina Michael was responsible for coming up with that idea.
No idea.
Wow.
I've been buying these things since I was a youngster in immediately after World War II.
Oh, there's Dale's. Hold on. We have another pop.
I'm pre-World War II, but I didn't start buying these until later.
Oh, another one.
Mine says, what does it say? Hague Foundation or something in the middle?
Yes, that's the name of the charity.
It's Hague Fund.
I wear this. My grandpa, my mother's uncles had it. Is the ruptured duck.
Ruptured duck.
Another one? Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Robert.
They did a history. There was a history thing because this is the 100th anniversary of wearing a poppy. And it was 100 years ago, 1921 in the summer, a French woman, got the idea of making the poppies and selling them to raise money to help the war wounded. And it's taken off since then.
Wow. That's really great.
Well, if you're collecting poppies, you'll have to get an Anzac poppy because they're altogether different as well. I don't know if there's anybody from down under attending today, but that's another one to look for.
Oh,
I see they're selling white poppies now.
This is something else we have, which is one of these.
Oh.
It's a cross, and you write the names of people that served in the war, in the Great War or Second World War, and then you plant them near a town cemetery.
Thank you for sharing, Chris. Oh, sorry. Those are your parents? Your brother?
These are two crosses. And every year I write the names of my relatives who passed away or who died in the First World War or Second World War. And on Sunday, which is our celebration, if you like, or, well, it is a celebration of the service they gave. We plant these in what's usually a small garden around the cenotaph. I just write down a list of names of people who served, including my mother and my aunts who served in munitions factories during the war, in the Second World War. Everybody did something. Every adult did something during the war. The Second.
May I ask one more question? Is that one of the things that Somerville Brothers has is in their old building, they had a memorial for all the people in the company who served or died. How much of a thing was that in British firms?
Oh, it was very big, especially in public services like the railways or the post office or the banks. You go to one of the big railway stations in London, you see a huge plaque on the wall with the names of people who served and the people who died. And also in every parish church you see in England, and Wales, and Scotland, and Ireland. There is
And a lot of schools
within the church. You see a board with the names of the people who died in the Great War and the Second World War, the Korean War. I guess
it's also very common in many schools as well. The school that I was at in England, in the main hall, they had big plaques with the those that had fallen in the First World War, the Second World War, Korean War. After the Korean War, it didn't seem to figure for some reason. It seems to have sort of faded off. I'm not sure if the wars that Britain was involved in, other than maybe the Falklands, was large enough to justify having that sort of memorial. But certainly, Boer War, First World War, Second World War, and Korean War at the school that I was at was certainly up on the walls.
Mine too. We also had in the public library there was a plaque of local residents who have perished in the 2 world wars.
Very nice. Valerie, are you there? I think she wanted to say something. She's off.
I was going to say nearly every village, certainly every town in England raised memorials after the First World War, and they were often extended to cover the Second World War, but most of them ran out of space, I'm afraid. So other memorials had to be built and adapted to cover different things. And the Bomber Command, as such, never had its own memorial until quite recently, when one was erected at Waddington, just outside Lincoln.
Valerie, you have something you want to, what is that?
This is something that was presented, that was signed by the mayor.
Okay, bring it back a little bit towards you. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I've got sort of background on them, makes me go crazy. So this is my husband's great-grandmother who had 3 sons who went out to World War I from Australia, where they lived. And 2 of them were killed. 1 came back wounded. And this is something that was presented by the mayor. It's not signed by the mayor, but it's, thing they sent out, and they stuck their own photo on. Although she kept a...
Oh. I can't see that. Oh, there we go. Oh, well, thank you very much for sharing. That was
on the wall. But in my family, World War I, that's my grandfather.
Oh, what a handsome man.
And he got married and a week later shipped out. A lot of good things. World War II, I can get it.
Yeah.
My dad and his brother, I'll see if I can get the focus right. And please note the shorts, because they went to Papua New Guinea and Papua New Guinea and Bougainville, so it was really, really hot.
Oh, there we go.
And short sleeves rolled up.
Oh.
And when Dad died at 97 and 1 day, just a few years ago, we put his army hat in with him, because when he came back, they took off the insignias and it became his gardening hat. And he kept it. We used to play with it. He'd go out to the garden and he'd still have his army hat that he put on. So we put that in his coffin with him.
Wow.
Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for your sacrifice.
Can you see that? Can you see it? That's just after the First World War. That's my grandfather and my grandmother on their wedding day. And my grandfather is wearing his Royal Field Artillery uniform. He was a driver with these horse-drawn field guns. There we go.
Well, thank you, John. Okay. Well, thank everyone for attending. Ken, thank you very much for a very intriguing talk. I can't wait until January to hear part 2.
Oh, you're welcome.
Excellent.
Are the bookings open for that? I couldn't see it on Eventbrite.
You will get a link after this to join, and it's also on our website. So next month we have from Canada, we have Christmas seals because December is Christmas. And that should be interesting because I know that's a subject I don't know much about. So I usually choose, we try to choose subjects. If I don't know about it, I said, oh, this must be interesting. So.
Yeah.
And Bob, do you want to check your chat? Because I sent you some messages.
Yeah. Today was real fun. And there's one thing I would like to hear something about. If I can't seem to find much material, Dunkirk, philately and other images. Because I was following that story is like the Dunkirk, the flag that all the ships that participated got is like, I'm just curious how much material is out there about Dunkirk and it can be still out there.
When you say material, what do you mean by material? Philatelic material?
Philatelic and otherwise. Because Dunkirk was
a lot of the boats that were used during Dunkirk, I believe, are still around, or some of them are still, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of information for you, but yeah.
I saw one British stamp about Dunkirk, and I was like, why am I not seeing more about Dunkirk?
It was a defeat, remember? It wasn't exactly something to wave a flag about.
I know.
I'm pretty embarrassed about it all. I mean, I think even Churchill said something to the same effect. We all consider it to be a victory, but it wasn't really.
They may make a movie of it someday.
Defeat.
They have. A recent 2 years ago, they made a movie.
Yeah, it wasn't very good, I didn't think. Any road.
Yeah.
Valerie, you got the wrong Bob. Sorry.
Valerie, I'm going to have to leave you folks, but it was a great presentation, Ken. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to January or the new year when we have the philatelic end of the story. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank everyone for joining us. Please tune in December, and our whole schedule's up there. I'm missing 2, but I'm not really missing 2. There's a mystery person I'm waiting to respond. So, and next November we have a really neat person. We have Gary Power Jr. from the spy thing, that Bridge of Spies. His father, he has all the letters from when he was in Russia. So that should be an interesting story also. This is going to be almost a war, like more of a military season, I think, coming up, but it's really interesting. And
a spy thing too, an espionage thing.
Espionage, yes. We'll be known as the British Espionage Empire Club, right?
Yeah, these are wonderful sessions. They really are. I thoroughly enjoy them.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy them. We have a lot of fun doing them.
Joan, before we go, last week we had a story about Yugoslavia in the 39 to 41 and going into the war. Is there anyone out there who's done the presentation of coming out of the war and trying to reestablish normalcy in terms of postal service after that? Because I have a feeling that's probably a very interesting, with the way that the world was unsettled. That's probably very interesting about how countries got back on normal footing for that.
Yeah, it would be a huge undertaking. Well, it was a huge undertaking. I suspect there's a great story there somewhere. Certainly the movement of the millions of displaced people across Europe was a huge undertaking, trying to get everybody sorted out again after the war. So I suspect putting together the philatelic or the postage system again must have been quite a challenge, particularly for the countries that have been invaded. I don't think Britain and the US suffered in the same way, but certainly all the European countries must have had a hell of a time putting it back together again, I would think. And yet, if you look at a lot of the postage material immediately post-war out of Germany, for example, I mean, it's amazing the quality of the material that came out so soon after having everything destroyed. So, yeah, there were some good organizers there, that's for sure. Anyway,
my uncle was in
the. I must leave you. I've got another appointment, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Take care. Bye-bye.
My uncle was in the occupation forces of Japan, where the Australians went in and they had a particular area that they went to. The different countries went to different areas. There's quite a lot of information online about that. So I've still got a stamp in my collection that has an overprint that was the occupation forces for Japan. They just took a normal stamp and put these black letters over it.
That's neat. Benjamin, Michael, Barry.
And thank you so much too for your help, because I couldn't have done this without all the help you gave. Thank you very much.
Well, Ken, my pleasure. I mean, this is really, really interesting. Jason, you're back.
Okay.
So, well, we're going to say goodnight so I can feed my husband, and Ken, I think you need to.
And your dog.
It's still only like 4 o'clock. It's cocktail hour.
You got to keep your dog away from your meal this time.
Yeah, I know. We're practicing and my dog is eating my food, you know. It's
Hi, Barry.
Good to see you again, Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you to for everyone who served in the military, and we'll see you